questions just to set it off, and then I will open the floor. When I open the floor, please identify yourself with your name and your organization. Please don't go into details on the work that you are doing, etc. We want to get to know the candidate. And then pose your question. We will give this mic so that our staff will be able to hand the mic to you. So my first question, Irina, is that the Secretary General's job is also a job where it involves overall management of the UN and its affiliated agencies. Can you say a little bit more about your management experience, both of your agency, but also of the UN Development Group, of which UNESCO is a part? The second question relates to, since this is an audience which is in the United States and probably is partially citizens of the US, how have you worked to improve the relationship of UNESCO with the United States government? Because there was a period in which it was not very good. And if you could shed some light on that.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Shazia. The first question about the management. I think the experience that I have at UNESCO is extremely helpful for one reason that is related to the second question. Because I don't know whether you put this deliberately, but yeah, I felt it, I sensed it. But let me say that we lost our funding, 22% of our funds in 2011, when Palestine joined UNESCO. And it was a decision of the General Conference of UNESCO, but the two laws adopted in the 90s by the US Congress during the Oslo process were triggered, which said that there will be automatic suspension of the funding. And I think it's important to emphasize because it's also linked to the second question. So as they say, never miss a good crisis to change things. Well, it was too good a crisis with us to lose 22% of our budget. In fact, we lost 30-something% of our budget, 33% of our budget, because the US did not pay for the preceding year. So just the next morning we woke up with a cut of more than 30%, almost 30%, roughly 30% of our budget. So I had to deal on a daily basis with management issues of how we adapt the organization to a lower level of our budget without losing sight of our mandate, which I believe is extremely important, and lose our leadership in the area of education and culture, sciences and communication. So of course, we were one of the first to change everything that could be changed, the way we travel, very tight and very low cost, I would say, efficiency measures. I decreased by 28% administrative expenses in the organization. We had to restructure. I abolished more than 400 posts, but I didn't practically fire people. This was done on a gradual basis with the different techniques, voluntary separations. Of course, I set an emergency fund, and this helped because many countries contributed to this emergency fund. So my idea was to have a soft landing in 2 years of the organization, which I did. So now I think we are adapted to this lower ceiling, and as I said, it helps us a lot to improve the management within the organization, to be cost efficient, and we introduce a lot of transparency measures. UNESCO is one of the first agencies that introduced the International Accounting Standards, IPSAS, in 2010. Then we introduced the IATI, the Initiative of Transparency, also in our organization. And we introduced a new system of evaluation, which was also very important because there was a little bit of, I would say, we missed this part of it, how we evaluate the impact of our programs and everything we did. And we made also a different way of doing with donors. So at the end of the day, after 4 years, now we have less administrative expenses, We have more extra budgetary funds coming to the organization, which means more trust in the organization from donors. We have diversified donors also, which is important. We work better with the European Union, which is a very, we had to change some of our rules and regulations and the way we are also being accountable to the European Commission. And if in 2010, when I started, we had projects, let's say for 2-3 million. Now we have 97 million. This was the last, I was in Brussels meeting the President of the European Commission. My mission was to have 100 million. We have achieved it, which means a lot of trust in the organization. And also I think we do better also within the United Nations system. I wanted also to bring closer UNESCO to the UN system and to the UN development community, because I think it's critical for the results that we want to achieve. And coming to your second question, as I said, it's related. The US did not took a deliberate decision to suspend the funding. It was just because of the law. And I would say that and I have tried to nurture relations and to keep the US close to us, because I do believe that UNESCO is important for the Americans, and also the US is important for UNESCO. If we want to serve as a universal platform for everything that we are doing, for solving problems in terms of intercultural dialogue, on tolerance. Now with the rise of violent extremism, we have even more, I would say, close, intimate relations with the United States. Secretary came to us, to the organization last October, and he made a big speech. We spoke about extremism and how we tackle this issue. I was invited, in fact, by President Obama already during the summit on preventing violent extremism on the margins of the General Assembly, because what we do in terms of prevention of radicalization, youth and violent extremism through education and through working with youth in intercultural dialogue is being recognized even in the counter-terrorist strategy of the Secretary-General as something very important. I remember during this summit, Prime Minister Cameron said something which deeply impressed me. This is echoed very deeply with what we believe at UNESCO, and what I believe. When he said, we should not go after these young people are radicalized. We have to go before they do this. We have to tackle the issue well before it is happening. We have to be in communities. We have to know to work with families. We have to work with religious leaders and others. And this is precisely what UNESCO is doing. It is precisely what I think also should be done. And of course then the issue of illicit trafficking of objects of art, of antiquities, Syria, Iraq, and everything that then finances extremism is something very high on the agenda of the United States. Not only, but there where we work very, very closely. We are launching now jointly with the United States a new program on STEM and girls, with the support of Intel and Microsoft and some other companies, which is in addition to some of the projects and programs that I started with the Procter & Gamble on girls' education, dropouts, and particularly adolescent girls, which is a very important, in my view, part of what we provide for girls and young women. With the private sector, I mentioned this because it means that with the private US sector we work very well into these areas. And definitely also what concerns freedom of expression and security of journalists. This is something also very high on our joint, I would say, agenda. So to wrap it up, it was a difficult period, extremely difficult crisis that I had to confront. But I hope we did it in a quite, I would say, good manner in terms of not stop to deliver something that is important in our mandate, keeping good relations with the United States, and it helped understand better what is at stake when we speak about reform of the UN. And last word, but I'm not elaborating. My experience 2 years ago, I became the Secretary General, asked me to become the chair of the high-level Committee on Management with the Chief Executive Board. So for 2 years, I'm leading this very important committee where all the UN agencies, funds and programs are sitting, discussing issues of human resources, of business models, of delivery is one from the point of view of the management work that we do on the field, joint procurement, and many of these very important issues. And this has also enlarged, I would say, my understanding of the system as a whole in terms of management. And I'm very grateful to all the colleagues that work in this committee, because this is the time where I was not only leading this effort, but also learned a lot from others, how they work and what can be done better for the whole of the UN system, so we did deliver this one.
Thank you.
Standing in the back, there are seats up here in the front if you'd like to find a place to sit.
Christian, you need to take this mic.
Oh, you got one. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to do 3 questions at a time so that Madame Bokova can then answer them. So this gentleman here is the first one. I'd like to take one from this side, the lady in the back. And then a third one is the gentleman there in the center. So first this one, please.
I'm Adam Skyko of Rockefeller University. You just cited a great French humanist. No one can fight the idea which time has come. And here's my question. Which one of the 3 most important ideas which time has come in 2016?
Yes, I'm Anne-Marie Carlson, Chair of the Committee on Teaching about the United Nations and immediate past Chair of the NGO DPI Executive Committee at the UN. My question is, it's somewhat of a question. I'd like Irina to think back in terms of all the accomplishments, most impressive ones that she shared with us this evening, and to try to choose 1 or 2 of those that she is most proud of.
Thank you.
Martin Rivlin from CUNY in Columbia. Actually, my question is related to your second question. Do you see any, how should I put this, any fallout or non-resolved tensions from the resolution of the Executive Committee that was just recently passed, in which the U.S. voted against, if I remember correctly?
I'm so sorry. Could you explain which resolution, which fallout?
Oh, the resolution by the Executive Committee about the Middle East and the status of the holy sites within Jerusalem.
It's difficult indeed to say which one of the ideas, but I do believe that probably the most important after everything that we see nowadays, conflict and tolerance rise. At the end, in my experience from UNESCO, I have to say, because we deal a lot with culture, with diversity, with heritage. I think at the end of the day, this is the idea that we are a common humanity. And the more I look at this world, the more I go to different places. Yesterday morning I came from Nepal, where I visited Lumbini, the birthplace of Lord Buddha. And I went to Nepal because we are going to reconstruct the temples, Buddhist temples, that were damaged, some of them totally destroyed during the earthquake, devastating earthquake last year. And I think once again, I've had the feeling that it is so important for these people that we give them back what belongs to them, to give them back the strength of their identity, of their culture. And it is equally important for for the destruction for the Syrians or for the any other place for the Malians, where I went to Mali also, and where we rebuilt the mausoleums in Timbuktu and preserved the manuscripts. I think the idea that at the end of the day we are different, we may come from different backgrounds, ethnicity, religion, race, you name it, but at the end of the day we are a common humanity. And I think this is probably the most important idea now after everything that is happening in the globalized world, with the connectivity, with the new technologies, with the huge opportunities, with the challenges of climate change, of loss of biodiversity. I think if we have not understood this, then we are really not fit for what is expected from us. So I think this is the most important idea whose time has come. And in terms of accomplishments, I think probably I had a very difficult time if you speak about UNESCO these last 7 years. I think the most probably important is that UNESCO still is relevant and that UNESCO still keeps the value system, which is very clear, very important, of where we want to lead the world, the soft power of UNESCO. It was very difficult, a very difficult period, very tough. But the fact that we have led the global thinking about education, the role of sciences, new technologies, so we have relevance into 9 and 17th Sustainable Development Goals, and I think we make a difference in many of these areas. Of course, it's not only personal, it's the team and all my colleagues that have been working very, very hard for this. But I'm very proud of this fact, because to be frank, in 2011 we were thinking, oh, are we going to survive and what's going to happen? So maybe not one single act, but all this effort, and in the end of the day, we did it. So this is the feeling of kind of a rewarding feeling that, you know, we did it because this is at the end of the day the expectation of many people. And now when I go someplace and speaking about Nepal, I'm sorry, I mean, because it's in my mind, I was there on Monday and Tuesday. I launched a new project on girls' education, adolescent girls' education. And then I went and visited 2 community learning centers outside. One was near Lumbini and another outside Kathmandu, 1 hour's drive. And I met with women. Half of them were elderly women who had passed through literacy courses. The other were young dropouts who had come with their kids, young women coming and then sharing their stories. It was really probably one of the best part of everywhere I go. It means that, and these are community learning centers led by us, not UNESCO. So it's extremely rewarding to see such the feeling that you have done something good for these people. The resolutions, I guess you're referring to the last decision, the resolution on the executive board. Well, of course, the easy answer is to say it's member states who decide, because it has been adopted by our member states, and probably you have seen that. I issued a statement after this decision. I issued another statement in October. It was before the vote in the executive board, and I think both statements should be looked as one and the same, I would say, approach. And then, of course, I made a speech last October at the executive board. The most important, from my point of view, is the fact that still Jerusalem is the birthplace of 3 monotheistic religions, and we have to look at it this way. I think the status of all part of Jerusalem is very important, and also building trust and dialogue is equally important. So this was my main message. Of course, member states are, it's their sovereign right to take decisions in one or another, and it's they vote. It's normally it's the UN. But from the point of view of UNESCO, I think we have to build trust, we have to build more confidence, and UNESCO is not a Security Council. We do not solve big political issues, but what we can do is to create an enabling environment for building trust and having this dialogue. So this was my message.
Thank you. So 3 more questions. The gentleman here, the lady here, and then the lady with the glasses there. So,
thank you. My name is Chunling Pang. I'm a UN staff member. So I want to ask you a question about because the staff member is also a very important asset of the organization. And the Secretary-General at the UN Charter is the Chief Administrative Officer. And just now you mentioned you are also the chair of the CEBHL-CM. So I would like to know if you were elected as the Secretary-General, what you have done for the UN internal reform, especially in terms of the human resource management. Like it's a very fashionable concept of mobility and the flexible workspace. Now it's a very hot issue in the UN, at least at the headquarters. I want to know what's your view and vision for this part.
there's a question here.
Hi, my name is Shazia Rafi. I am a professor at CUNY, City University of New York. My question for you is about refugees, about wars, plural. I'm sure you have been given a lot of thought about what would you do as the secretary, since there are so many conflicts around the world. And I'm talking about refugees like the Syrian refugees or Iraqi or Colombians. Actually, I'm a Colombian and there are millions of internal refugees in Colombia. So my question for you is, what would you do as a secretary in terms of policies for refugees? Thank you.
And then the lady in the back, in the middle with the glasses.
Hi, Susan O'Malley, and I'm the chair of the NGO Committee on the Status of Women, New York, and the my NGO, International Federation of Business and Professional Women. And I was a CUNY professor. That seems to be a passion to me. Anyway, my question is, what about gender equity and the UN? Thank you.
Well, the first question about the staff association. Of course, I'm working. You can imagine that being the head of an agency, you deal on a daily basis with issues of staff. I think what is, from my view, important, and you may know that there is a new decision from the ICSC Commission and reforming and changing, and I believe it's the report of the Commission was very sensible, and there were good proposals there. Of course, it has to be fixed in terms of some of the issues of single mothers and others that they feel, but simplifying and making it more flexible, I think it's a good approach to the UN. Of course, now we are discussing the global staff issue that we have to look at all UN system, the staff of all UN systems, and I think this is where harmonizing some of the practices of different agencies, funds and programs is very important. If we have, I strongly encourage mobility within the UN system, which currently is not happening. I think it will be giving a much more solid approach is very much necessary. I believe we have to have more support for staff from the point of view of training. Definitely, I'm introducing in my organization now we have lost a lot of time because of lack of funds. Now we have funds in order to make more training. What is also important is retaining talent in the United Nations system. And I think I have, from my experience, I know that we have still to differentiate. We have to give the possibility of really talented, hardworking people to. We cannot make equal approach to everybody because it demoralizes staff. And I know the Staff Association have come many times to me and said sound evaluation of staff is important based on objective criteria, of course, and managers should also manage staff. So many of these issues are very important. In terms of having more flexibility, I think it is important. I personally, of course, it's a very different situation here, but I have encouraged staff to go to the field, to have a normal cycle of going to the field and coming back, because it definitely has enriched staff, and they can have better careers if they have the feeling of the field. And I know that not all staff can do this because of the specificity of different jobs. It's natural, but I have always encouraged staff to go to the field. At the end of the day, we serve people in the United Nations. There should be a sense of mission. There should be a sense of purpose. And if staff does not have this sense of purpose and of missions, of serving the people, what are we here talking about? Because we know, coming to the question about the refugees and all this, if we are clinging to something that we don't want to change the simplest of the things, when we see this huge humanitarian disaster, when we really have to be cost-saving, efficient, to change, to be more flexible, what are we actually, whom are we serving? We're not serving ourselves. We're serving these people. So I think this sense of purpose and mission should be very deeply kind of anchored into staff. And this is what I think we should do, and what I have been trying to do in my organization. Because we see the refugee crisis coming now to the other question. It is refugees, but it is also IDPs, internally displaced people. We're talking about Colombia. And we know that in many parts of the world, sometimes we even don't consider the IDPs in the same way as we consider the refugees. But there is something which is unseen in the world. We know that 60 million refugees that are on the road fleeing conflict, and there has been a lot of very interesting, important studies like the financing of humanitarian crisis. There will be now the Istanbul Humanitarian Summit in May. There is the new report about also the peacekeeping and peace building and operations. All of them are very relevant, I think. What is, in my view, from my point of view, very important, without going much into the details, of course there are many different ideas and assessment. I think the most important, of course, is to go to the root causes of all this and to place, once again, more preventing, more anticipating the such situations. I think from that point of view, initiatives like the Rights Up Front of the Secretary-General that he launched are playing a very important role as an internal initiative for the United Nations, so that we could better prevent, better see, better than go and alert the Security Council about some of these conflicts or violations of human rights. And then, of course, look at all the different aspects. I think this alerted us to maybe looking again at the international legal framework of refugees that exists. I know there are different ideas about that. Link better humanitarian and developmental issue. Speaking about refugees, I think that some of the developmental, in protracted crises like the Syrian crisis, looking at it not just as a humanitarian but also as a developmental issue, of working with host communities and host countries, of tackling issues like education for refugees, skills integrating them, giving them the possibility to do something meaningful, because I really believe that when a refugee finds a job, he or she is not refugee anymore. It's a very different setting, but you need to link both. Now we have, in the UN, in our system, is very much detached, and there is a lot of thinking along these lines. even somebody was suggesting that the humanitarian summit should have been called Humanitarian and Developmental Summit. I'm sure that many of these developmental issues will be discussed there. Having national ownership in some of these circumstances also is very important. So there are many things now. I know that the International Organization of Migration is, I think we should bring it close, it should be part of the UN system. Now it is outside the UN system. So there are many ideas that are floating around, and I think all of them should be very carefully looked there. Some of them are really pressing, and financing is very important of this humanitarian crisis and refugees, and using the development assistance, bringing closer the international development banks, in the different regions, and the World Bank is very much into this for the first time. So I think we have awakened for a very different situation in the world, and we have, I think, to take stock of all these different elements, ideas, and we will go in September to the big summit also on the refugees and migration, which will be a very important, I think, stage, a very important step in taking stock and adopting some important decisions. And the last question about the status of women and the gender equality, well, it's a big issue, and frankly, I do believe, and to be frank, I'm not saying it now because I'm campaigning or something. I really believe that the 21st century should be the century of serious, very serious decisions, steps, movement towards gender equality. I think now we know actually what is happening. There are no excuses anymore. I think we know the impact of what holds women back. We know the power of education. We know what is important in order to empower women. We know about the violence against women. And I'm not speaking only about sexual violence, rape, and everything that is used nowadays as a tool of war, but it's much bigger. The dimension, the depth of this problem is huge, and I think the United Nations women nowadays are doing a great job in raising very high these issues, which are holding back societies, holding development, holding economies. The non-inclusion of women in economic life is holding developed societies back into having economic growth and social inclusion. So I do believe that this is a huge task for the 21st century. And I'm sure that, of course, the United Nations can continue. I don't say that they don't have it. It's the leader, and it's very important leader. We have to be a little bit more to hold governments accountable. I think now with the SDGs there are indicators, there is goal number 5, but this is not only goal number 5, because all of I believe, the 17 SDGs have a relation to gender equality and women's empowerment, because I think we should speak about women's empowerment, not just giving the chance, but really empower women to do anything, to make their choices and to do everything they want to do. So I think we all know what has to be done. We just have to go about the governments and others and to make this happen.
I just want to add one clarification to that last question on gender equity, because I think one is what the UN can do about making sure different member governments are implementing the gender equity goals, but what the UN system itself can do. The UN itself is far from parity, and at the senior level it's less than a quarter. And part of it is that the jobs are allocated by deals within the governments as well as among governments, and also the candidate list that governments put up. Several years ago I did a study for Ms. Magazine, and that year the Netherlands put up 28 candidates, only 2 were women. So this is a job that in a certain sense the role of the leadership of the Secretary General will also be, it will be huge, 20 years after Beijing that we would have a woman. It was our dream when we were there. I don't know how many of you were at Beijing, but I was. You know, but in addition, at the next layers, it's going to be something we are looking forward to Madam Secretary General being able to implement as well.
Well, maybe I could add something.
Yes,
on this
yeah.
point, I think it's
Because I
important.
think it's important.
Yes, it's
very
important on this. I could share with you what I did. Simply what I did. Now, when I came to UNESCO, the percentage of women at the D and high positions, I spoke about my ADGs, but at the D and high was 24%. Now, this day, is 44%. And we will have a couple of also new recruitments by the end of the year. I think we will, my ambition was to, until the end of my mandate, to have a parity. And I think we are approaching this. And I have to say that it was not that easy, because I would say that in our mandate is so diverse, and in some of the areas it is not traditionally considered to have women in such positions. Because we have the science sector, for example. It is for the first time I appointed in my first team a woman ADG for science, and now I have another woman in my second team ADG for science. It's the first time I appointed a woman on the hydrological program. We have the only big international intergovernmental hydrological program in the organization, and I'm a very qualified, very good woman. And also, this is why I said that in some cases it is not that easy even to break the ceiling, as we say. At the D2 level, women in the organization are 67%. So this is just the situation. At the senior management team, women are the predominant majority. So at the field we had very few women, and I think now I'm turning the tide. I want, when I leave the organization, to have a critical mass of women in these positions, that whatever happens, it will stay. I think it is very important. Now, how I did it? I think we improved our system of announcing our recruitments. We used much more diversified means to reach out to candidates. It's a very competitive, of course, process there. And I have confronted, I would say, one big obstacle. And I have to share this with you, because when I convened all these panels, recruitment panels, and particularly when it is an important job, which is not traditionally, as I said, considered to be for a woman, always the question was, we need a strong leader. And even in one of the panels, they came to me and said, well, there is a very good candidate, but you know, being a woman, but we need somebody strong. So at some point, at the very beginning, I said, define for me, what do you mean by strong? Physically strong, muscles? Or in this particular case, when I had the hydrological program, I said somebody's carrying water, like, you know, women unfortunately do in Africa, in many of these places. So I had to overcome kind of a natural, always question that comes, is she strong? And this frustrated me enormously in some of these cases, but that is why I thought that having a critical mass of women in these positions is extremely, extremely necessary in order to overcome some of these subconscious perceptions about women not taking these important positions of directors. So this is my experience.
No, I think it's